This is what the Seattle Seahawks need to do in the 2024 NFL Draft. Ryan Wilson and Chris Passo from With the First Pick podcast here to give you the ultimate mock draft for the team that picks number 16 overall. All right, producer Harry, let's jump into the old NFL mock draft database simulator. Starting at pick 16. The picks are coming off the clock fast and furious. A lot of needs in Seattle. And here we are at pick 16.
Yeah, they don't really have like a clear cut, like need to go in a specific direction, right? In the first round, I don't feel like it's a telegraph. They need to go corner or they need to, do something else. Like, how do you kind of feel about their positional needs in the first round?
So the tackles are taken care of. They drafted Abe Lucas and Charles Cross in that same draft class a couple years ago. Both starters when they're healthy. I think along the interior offensive line, there's some opportunities to improve here. Is 16 too rich for a Jackson Powers Johnson? And then, you sort of touched on it. Do you need help in the secondary? Yeah, but you also have Reek Woolen, who had an off year last year. But, of course, Devin Witherspoon was one of the best players on defense in football last year. You could think defensive line. We see Byron Murphy II staring us in the face there at 16 as well. They have Jerron Reed. They signed Jonathan Hankins. They re-upped Leonard Williams. But beyond that, you have Dre Jones on the roster. I mean, that's something else to think about. But to your point, exactly, there's no clear-cut slam dunk. And look, let's start here. Brock Bowers is on the board at 10. You have Noah Fant. You signed Pharaoh Brown. And after that, not a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think this kind of brings me back to Brock Bowers and that he's the highest graded player here in this database. I think both of us would think that this would probably be good value there. They kind of feel like just a best player available. Like they're a team that, again, doesn't have one clear-cut need. They just have like a bunch of needs. So I think they will be in best player available situation. I'm fine with Brock Bowers here because even though they re-signed Noah Fant, he's not really the guy at tight end.
So, right, then the question becomes, do you get more value out of a Brock Bowers or maybe a Byron Murphy or maybe a Jackson Powers Johnson? So I'll ask you that before we make the ultimate decision here.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And, I mean, this tight end class is kind of weak. I would think even with Draymond Jones, I would say Byron Murphy probably could get the most juice out of him. But if we're kind of factoring what I just said, that the tight end class is not very good. I would be between those two. Brock Bowers, because you're just getting the clear-cut best player at his position, but it is a tight end. But I kind of think that like it's been so DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett centric, that offense, to have someone down the seam would probably be a good idea.
And the other thing is they had 2 first-round draft picks a year ago, and no one thought they were taking Dev Witherspoon at 5.
No.
And then they came back with Jackson Smith-Njigba at 20. So they're not necessarily following the by-the-book, fill the draft needs.
They never do.
Yeah, so let's go Brock Bowers here, producer Harry.
Okay.
And get this team even more offense for my guy, Eugene Smith III.
Yeah, I like just the depth at defensive tackle later, like with Chris Jenkins and Michael Hall. Like I think they could get someone later to fill some of that, if there is a void along the interior of the defensive line, I think they could get that later more so than a tight end.
Right.
All right, where are we at? 81 now.
All right, we're up to pick 81 here.
Don't need a running
back. Rook Ororo, I can never pronounce his name. The defensive tackle out of Clemson's still here, and that seems.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, that seems like some pretty good value. Let's see who the other defensive tackles are, Harry, as we sit here. Leonard Taylor, Dwayne Carter. I think I like Dwayne a little more, but I think folks are split on Rook. Makai Wingo out of LSU, worked out of the LSU Proto the other day.
How did he work out?
He looked good. He's a little undersized. I would prefer a Carter.
He's a twitch. Yeah, like he's a twitchy type. He's kind of like Dwayne Carter, but I think Carter's a little more NFL ready.
Yeah, I think he's probably a little thicker. I don't have their numbers.
And then just check interior offensive line, Harry, to see if there's
line too over here. So Pooney's still there. Mahogany. Mason McCormick is a guy I love. 81 is the 3rd round, unless my math is wrong.
I love Mason McCormick. He's like my number 50 or 51 overall player. Like I think his athleticism is through the roof. I would pick him there if I were the Seahawks.
And I was watching Christian Boyd out of Northern Iowa recently, the defensive tackle, and he is dominant until he met Mason McCormick.
Yes, absolutely. Watching those two, the Northern Iowa South Dakota State game, that was fun watching those two.
All right,
I'm all in on Mason McCormick.
All right, we're deep in the weeds, Harry, when we're talking Northern Iowa South Dakota State games. All right, Mason McCormick, it is bolsters the interior offensive line. He is a Animal.
Athletic too, very
an
athletic
tackle. Yep. So 102 is next, and let's see here. So I mean, Jalen McMillan's still sitting there. We don't need him, but that's a fun name to look at. Jeremiah Trotter, the off-ball linebacker, still there.
They signed Tyrell Dotson and Jerome Baker in free agency.
Yeah, so they seem like they seem pretty good there. Brandon Dorless, we just we didn't get offensive line help yet. So defensive line help yet. So Brandon Dorless is still there.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
They have him listed as an edge, but I think he's best inside at like 6'3", 285.
Right. He's one of those tweeners, as it were, on the inside. Leonard Taylor still there. I wanted to see a little more from Leonard Taylor last year. I didn't see it.
Me too. What's the deal with McKinley Jackson? That he looks like this freak of an athlete at nose tackle and was like this monster recruit. And then he like had one of the worst combine workouts. It's kind of like indicative of the Texas A&M program, how it kind of deteriorated. It's like weird. Like his combine does not match up with his film.
And I liked the way he played in 2023.
Yeah,
and I think at one point he was in my top 50 early in the at some point in the fall. And as you sort of noted, he fell off the map. Scroll down a little bit here, Harris. Let's see what else is on the board. Keith Randolph, Christian Boyd still there, who I like. Maybe wait a little bit for Christian Boyd. Marcus Harris, we've talked about it at Auburn, who had a good season and didn't stand out of the Senior Bowl like I was hoping he would. Jordan Jefferson, who knows Christian Haynes very well from their Senior Bowl interactions out of LSU. Which direction are you thinking here?
I would lean Brandon Dorless or McKinley Jackson, just because I think those are the two best athletes on the field that can get to the quarterback, which I think is, of course, very important.
And it feels like the Seahawks at times like tweeners
in that position. They do.
So before we make
the decision.
Before we make the ultimate decision here, it sounds like this is literally life or death. Hit the all button, Harry, and let's see who else is. Make sure we're not missing anyone. So Trod McMillan, Dorless is right there. Jalen Wright catches my attention. We don't need him. I mean, they have Jack Starbury, they have Ken Walker III, but I love his game. Jermaine Burton is also interesting. Kate Stubbs is still been there. Yep, Brandon Dorless it is. Let's take Brandon Dorless.
Brandon Dorless. They like the tweeners. I'm not going to say he's Chris Jones. He's smaller, but he's like kind of stylistically like Chris Jones. Like where do you play him? But he can get up the field, and he just for 3 straight years at Oregon, Brandon Dorless was like in the backfield repeatedly.
Right. Exactly.
All right.
Okay, hold on.
118.
Here. So let me double check what happened here because they moved on from Drew Lock. He's now with the Giants, if I recall correctly.
Correct.
So it's just Sam Howell is now there. Okay. I was going to.
They traded for Howell.
I was going to pull the trigger on my guy Spencer Rattler, but we're okay. They only have two quarterbacks on the roster, but I'm not going to use pick 118 on a quarterback just yet. Kyrie Jackson staring us in the face.
I was going to say, what about another like Tyreek Woolen, like super long, like physical, that kind of have the Brandon Browner type from, I know Pete Carroll's not there anymore, but I wonder if they would gravitate toward that player or away. But in the past, if this was Pete Carroll, I would say it's Kyrie Jackson. He's going to be the pick because he has the length.
Well, the only other corner, obviously, Dev Witherspoon's on the roster, but he can play in the slot. He excelled at that last year. We'll see what they end up putting in. But outside, other than Reek Woolen, is Michael Jackson right now. In terms of starters,
they have Kobe Bryant too.
Yeah. And he's been there a few years. He hasn't. Yeah. He came out with sauce.
He's upgradable from him. Like you don't not pick a corner because you have him.
Exactly.
What do you think here?
I love Kyrie Jackson. I loved his tape at Oregon, Alabama transfer. I think he ran 4.5 and he plays like that, but he's also
he's like 6'3", 200, like with 33-inch arms. Let's go Kyrie Jackson just to add some more depth to the secondary.
All right,
we're cooking. Let's go 179.
Checking
That's
off boxes
5.
here.
Round 5. What about for this pick? Once we get here, to look at more of a traditional edge rusher. They drafted Derek Hall in the 2nd round last year. Didn't really do much. I think he was injured a little bit. It kind of feels, unless I'm just blatantly forgetting a Seahawks.
That boy Amafe.
Okay, he played well last year, but it kind of feels like they could maybe use like in the 5th round of a little bit of a flyer.
100%. Yeah. So they have Darrell Taylor, they have Derek Hall, they have Uchenna Nwosu, and they have Boye Mafe.
Okay. But it's like all solid players, but you could upgrade from them and try to throw another dart.
So I love Javon Solomon. I haven't heard a lot of talk about him. He's at Troy. He came to the Senior Bowl and he held his own. He didn't flash like he was Montez Sweat back in the day, but I like his game. Scroll down a little bit, Harry. Let's see who else we have. Jalix Hunt is Xavier Thomas is a situational guy. Jalen Harrell to me is a little undersized coming out of Michigan. And John Baptiste, I think I like him as a later round flyer.
Later than 179.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would lean Javon Solomon. He's kind of Uchenna Nwosu like he's smaller, and you're just like, how is he getting to the quarterback all the time? Didn't test really well at the combine, but like the production kind of stands out, and he is just your classic 2-point stance, get up the field, bend the corner type. Yeah, just get after it. And I think that's kind of what they need and kind of what they were hoping for, and probably hope to still get when they picked Derek Hall in the second round last year at Auburn.
I'm with that all day. Javon Solomon, let's do it.
Solomon, yeah.
All right.
We're getting deep here.
We got defensive tackle-ish, edge, and cornerback taken care of on the defensive side of the ball. What else do we need here? We'll just go best player available. Here's the thing. Like, I love James Williams' tape. His testing numbers weren't as great as I was hoping. I love Oladipo.
I like him a lot, and it feels like I'm higher on him than most. Like a lot of these mock sims that I've done, he's always available like in the 5th round, and I think at his size, like over 6'1", like 210 pounds, like the coverage was pretty good. The tackling was pretty reliable. So he kind of feels like, especially semi-local for the Seahawks, and with what Mike McDonald wants to do to have that bigger, he had Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore. I could see him being like, hey, this could be a developmental guy that I could hope could get somewhere in the stratosphere of that Kyle Hamilton, move him around, do everything type. I really like Oladipo.
Yeah, Keaton Oladipo out of Oregon State. I liked his tape a lot too, and I was talking with a scout about him a month or so ago around the Senior Bowl, and I was like, I like him late day 2. He goes, he probably ends up going on day 3. And we're right here in day 3, and they have Rashawn Jenkins and Kayvon Wallace who they signed, but you can still add guys.
Yeah, for sure. With that duo, you could definitely upgrade. So
and I always think about it. You mentioned Kyle Hamilton is probably the ceiling, but Hufanga was a 4th or 5th round pick, I believe, and that's the things he's able to do. Best case scenario is what you're getting out of players when you draft in this range of that sort of similar measurables athleticism. All right, let's do it.
For sure.
Oladipo, Oregon State.
Okay, one last pick, 235. Yeah, he can really do everything. I'm a big fan of his game. It kind of like feels like he's the type of safety that especially Mike McDonald will definitely lean toward because of his versatility.
All right, let's see. Let's do quarterbacks just for fun here because we only have 2 on the roster. I like Carter Bradley.
He's got a big arm.
He's got a big arm. I thought he had a better Senior Bowl than Tyson Bagent did a year ago. Okay. Tyson Bagent obviously got the most out of his rookie season in Chicago. Keaton Slovis, yes, he ran into the 4.5s, but I think that's where the conversation ends for me. No disrespect to Keaton
honestly, there's no one that really.
I saw Joe Milton's names flash by. If he'd still been there, I would have considered.
Oh, he would definitely be the one just because of the arm is just he has the strongest arm maybe in the NFL instantly.
All right, let's go to Harry. See what we can get to. So Marcus Rosemead, Jack Saints there. I think he ran the 4.8s, which isn't great. Yeah, I like the way he played at Georgia. Isaiah Davis, a running back. Andrew Raines, the interior offensive lineman. Anything pop out to you?
Nothing. Honestly, I like the center from Penn State. I know we already picked Mason McCormick, and they picked Oluwatimi last year from Michigan in the 5th round, who I actually loved. Coming out, I thought he was so balanced and just strong.
And they did sign Nick Harris too.
They signed Nick Harris, so yeah, maybe that would be a little redundant.
Here, keep scrolling here. Let's see what else we got down there.
Yeah, let's see if there's any like name that really.
We don't need Brevin Spann-Ford. Cornelius Johnson is Emory's big on him as a long. How about Xavier Thomas as a situational?
Another one. Oh yeah, I think again this is a team that doesn't really have that alpha guy or that number 1 guy. That's like, oh, hey, he's going to be your 15 sack guy. It's a bunch of quality-ish players, good athletes. You pick Javon Solomon at 179. I think Xavier Thomas, who was like a huge recruit, played 5 seasons at Clemson. I'd be fine with him here at 235.
All right, let's do that. Get them 2 edge rushers, and they can figure it out once they get to rookie mini camps and OTAs and training camp. All right, that is a wrap. Brock Bowers, surprise pick at 16. I mean, in the mock drafts we do for the website and on these things, rarely have I thought about Brock Bowers going to Seattle, and sometimes he's available, so I don't hate it. And it feels like an outside the box Seattle pick. Mason McCormick in round 3 to bolster interior offensive line, Brandon Dorlus and Javon Solomon And Xavier Thomas on the other side on the defensive line, Kyrie Jackson along cornerback, and Keaton Oladapo safety.
It feels like a Baltimore Ravens style draft, and I think with their head coach having 2 stops there now, it with edge rushers, corners, shoring up the interior of the offensive line, I think that's important for Seattle.
Absolutely. All right, that wraps up the Perfect Seahawks draft class. Make sure to subscribe to NFL and CBS on YouTube and download the With the First Pick podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Stay tuned for more Ultimate Mock Drafts because we're covering all 32 teams.